But we'll talk offensive line coming up next. Are they improving? Are they going to be ready to have a resurgent season? Are they going to bounce back? We'll discuss all that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So the offensive line, that's the thing we're going to discuss now, because it's a group that was not good last year. It was not up to the Oklahoma Sooners standard, as much of the offense was not up to the Oklahoma Sooners standard.
Yep.
But a lot of folks are really down on the group, from the assistant coach that runs the show to the talent that they've got in the room, because of how poor of a year it was last year. I mean, for the first half of the season, you couldn't pass protect, you couldn't run block, you couldn't really do anything. Second half of the season, you showed some improvement. You pass protected just a little bit better, except for like the end of the Ole Miss game. You ran blocked a lot better against Alabama, maybe not as good as you would have liked against Navy. It was an up and down season for this group. So Jay, call me crazy, but I really feel like that was an aberration year, that we're not going to see a similar performance out of that group in 2025.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we look at this, especially this article here. We allowed FBS worst 50 sacks last year. Now, to me, majority of sacks is a QB stat for a reason, because it's typically because the quarterback didn't do his part and get rid of the ball. Now, there was cases in last year. I'm not absolving the O-line of anything here, because there were a lot of situations where O-line just got beat up. And the quarterback got smacked right as soon as he had the ball in his hand. So, not saying the O-line wasn't bad, but I think of that as a QB stat, but I can't think of it a QB stat in this situation for this team because of not last season. Not completely. I can't. And so I'm fair on that. The good thing is that, like you talked about in the first segment with Derek Simmons coming in as a transfer, supposedly he's country strong, as in country strong. So he's out there throwing dudes around. He's pushed people around, and he's making space. You bring in true freshman Owen Hollenbeck, which I love because he's a power lifter as well as a wrestler. So you know that he's not losing no one-on-one battles that easily. You got to work your butt off to get around that kid. He's going to do everything he can legally to win that battle with you. Some things may not seem like it's legal, but he gonna make it work. So I don't believe that this line will be what it was last year. I think this line should be able to dramatically drop that sack number, especially because John Mateer is the type to throw the ball, or he's going to tuck and run. He's going to be decisive, which will help this offensive line be able to figure out what to do. And we're bringing back more experience. Like, there's so many offensive line configurations. Like one I saw with because Kevin Wilson's working with the line with Bill Bedenbaugh, and I saw one recruit was talking about how he just loves Bill Bedenbaugh and the way that they work with the players and how they get into them. It's like they're really coaching. It made me feel good. I'm like, all right, I see recruits over here liking some actual coaching, but there was one configuration I saw that I liked. You had at, I think, left tackle was, I believe it was Derek Simmons was actually at the left on this. Actually, Buklenko was at the left. You had Eddie Pierre-Louis at left guard. Center was Troy Everett. Right guard was Febechi Nwaiwu. Right tackle was Derek Simmons. And then I think Jake Taylor was also in one. He rotated at tackle a little bit. Isaiah Autry-Dent rotated also. But John, you put Eddie Pierre-Louis at left guard? I've been talking about that. I've been thinking that him and Nwaiwu would be amazing guards together, because Nwaiwu now year 2 under Bill Bedenbaugh should be able to make that next leap, that, McKay Matower leap that everyone actually started liking the dude after year 1. Give him that second year bump. Mm-hmm. I think he'd be good. Same thing with Eddie Pierre-Louis at the left, because I think that he'll do a better job of blocking the blind side for John Mateer.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of talent, and I think there's a lot of potential. You've got the experienced guys in Simmons, Nwaiwu, Everett, Buklenko, but your ceiling is higher if guys like Eddie Pierre-Louis takes the job, if a guy like, whether it's Sexton or Taylor or even Michael Fasusi, takes that left tackle job and raises the ceiling. So I think Luke Buklenko is going to be solid. I just don't know if he's like definitively an SEC offensive tackle, or is he an SEC left tackle? That's the part that I'm going to have questions about. I feel pretty solid that they're going to have a really nice trio on the interior, and I like Derek Simmons, and I like what he's going to be able to bring to the table. It's just that left tackle spot, I think, is going to be the question. Because, listen, Jake Taylor, Jacob Sexton, both former 4-star guys, they just haven't been healthy.
Yep.
And to quote the great Bill Parcells, the best ability is availability.
Exactly.
And if you're not going to be available, it's hard to trust that you're going to be able to do what you're supposed to do on a given Saturday. So left tackle is arguably one of the best or most intriguing, position battles right now on the roster. You could throw left guard in there if you want to call Jacob Sexton versus Eddie Pierre-Louis a position battle at left guard with Heath Ozida sitting out. I think you could do that because they wanted to play Jacob Sexton at left guard last year. It just didn't work out because of all the injuries that they were suffering along the offensive line. So it's going to be really, really fascinating, but it comes back to my earlier point that I just feel like this is going to be a bounce back year for Oklahoma, because how often does Bill Bedenbaugh have a bad offensive line?
It's rare. And they usually always bounce back. They usually bounce back the next year.
And they may not be like, not every year is it a Joe Moore award winning or Joe Moore contending offensive line, but most years it's solid to really good. And most of those years it's really good. The 2023 offensive line, it wasn't great, but it was really good. When you had Walter Rouse and I can't remember who the left guard was, but you still had Andrew Rame at center. You had McCade Matauer at right guard, and you had not Anton Harrison, Tyler Guyton at right tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was a really good group. Oh, Caden Green was at left guard.
Yeah. It was a mixture of Green and Troy Everett.
Yeah.
Troy Everett started, Green finished it.
Like, that wasn't a perfect group, but it was a group that was good enough to help them win 10 games and actually put them in a position where they honestly probably should have beat Kansas or Oklahoma State if not for some play calling problems from Jeff Levy.
And that's why I pointed out the year 2 bump for Febechi Nwaiwu he should get. Troy Everett got that this past season, right? Like, he ended up getting benched last year at left guard just because he not only was not his strength up, but his weight wasn't up. And Caden was able to come in there and push folks around. Well, then you got the next year, he gets hurt, and has to have knee surgery right before the season starts. And then he comes back right at SEC play. You see Troy Everett out there pushing SEC defensive lineman around. He was your best offensive lineman when he got on the field. And then at the same time, him and Nwaiwu were your most consistent. So you're right. The offensive line is not going to be perfect, but Bill Bedenbaugh's always done a great job of figuring things out. Like, he had to have multiple configurations on offensive line because dudes had labrum problems. Y'all see all them labrums that we had to have that was on the list of injured people? Obviously, shoulders were having issues, and it was probably more so because a lot of them were trying to make up for the inexperience around them. That happens. It's compensating for other stuff around you. To me, now Febechi Nwaiwu should give you that, like I said, that bump, that year 2 bump, because now he's been out there long enough. He's been out there for a full year with Bill Bedenbaugh and Schmitty to get the strength that he needs. And he's probably going to step up. I mean, he got SEC Player of the Week 1 week, which, man, I still can't believe they did that to that dude. How you going to put a video of him getting ran smooth over when he's terrible. SEC Player of the Week? That's just mean, SEC. That's just rude. But it's okay.
That's when they needed to just have, like, Offensive Line of the Week as like Offensive Lineman of the Week, because that was...
But that's of all videos to use, was that one? Y'all couldn't find another one?
Yeah.
No, you have to use the one he gets blown up on and Xavier Robinson score, but I digress.
Yeah.
I think that he'll get to that. He's gonna be one of your anchors. Him and Troy Everett will be your anchors there. Jacob Sexton, he gets healthy. He should be really good right there at the left. Like I said, add Eddie Pierre-Louis. And honestly, it's gonna either be between Derek Simmons and Jake Taylor at your right tackle to start. But I think Derek Simmons may end up getting it because I do believe he's got that country strength on him.
And he's going to have a healthy offseason to be able to contribute. And I think that matters. Like, you got to be healthy in the offseason so you can develop. If you're not healthy, you're not developing. You're not on the practice field getting the offensive down and working with the guys next to you. That kind of stuff matters. And it's going to matter But this is going to be a group, like most years, that we may not have a solid answer on who's starting along the offensive line until we get to the season. So it's going to be one of those questions that we continue to talk about, but we'll talk about the guys who create buzz in fall camp here on Locked On Sooners. So make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that notification bell as well to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports. Go check out his channel, Unfair Sports, on YouTube. You can follow me at John9Williams. You can read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. The show is at Locked On Sooners on all of your favorite social media platforms. Also, go check out the Locked On College Basketball podcast with Andy Patton and Isaac Shade, breaking everything down as you get ready for NCAA tournament play. The SEC and Big Conference championships are happening right now. So go check out Locked On College Basketball, again, available wherever you get your podcasts. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. We'll talk to you then. Boomer
Sooner.